Oh, so squash and stretch, right? So squash and stretch, we think about in terms of a lot of the time, like a bouncing ball, right? So volume, right? So here's the model, like a round ball. If I exaggerate the squash, kind of like stretching it out, but keeping the volume, so coming in as you're going up, squashing, right, down, but then the volume goes outwards. This example is just looking at the squash and stretch of what happens when you open the jaw or close the jaw and kind of squish the face in, right? It's still squashing and stretching out the pose. And we can push this, right? We can push this and it's going to give us a good texturing the time and again. So it's never just one thing, right? You never just do one thing. Like adding a stretch pose is going to affect spacing, right? So it's so squashing is going to affect the timing and the spacing of the character as well. So here we've got, still squash and stretch, but the character is, putting the clothing on, but they're coming down, right? So in ours, we'll see in a minute, the squash is the kind of, as well as the anticipation of the jump, right? Because we're compressing the character just before we stretch them out. Most basic form of squash and stretch that we've all seen before, right? Very simple, but we're keeping the volume of the character here. Right, let's go through here around squashing and stretch, right? Right here, right? Down pose. Kind of missing the stretch, right? Missing a beat there where we could have added that up, right? So we've come down. Let's add the up to add a little bit of the stretch. And again, through here a little bit, right? If once we're scrolling this character through, there's a few frames where I feel a bit flat. We could really pull the character in a little bit and stretch them out. And we could do that by just pulling that chest up and down in the translation Y. We could repose the character a little bit or push this in the curve editor, right? If we're looking at this, grabbing these keys and just pulling them down. So now we're pushing the up and down a little bit. And that we then want to just reflect that in the way that the spine reacts, right? Add a little bit more curvature and straightness of the spine as we're coming out of the squash. Right? Adding more squash here, right? Pushing that pose, right? Compressing it up. And we can do that by moving the arms up, shrugging the shoulders, feeling like the head's being squashed into the neck more. And then that gives us a good pose out of that. Here, right, where we're stretching the character, right? Shoulders drop down a little bit. Right? The head is extended out. Again, we've got a squash pose here, right? We're squashed. Maybe you want to hold that squash a bit longer, right? Where's the stretch happening? Here's the stretch now, right? Stretch. Would it have been good to maybe have a squash pose in here, maybe? I'm not too sure. Maybe not. And then we stretch it out later. Flip between the two. Okay, these are all these choices that we can make as we're posing the character, right? Okay,